There's a particular kind of silence that happens when someone asks you to destroy your life for their comfort. It's not peaceful. It's the silence before a car crash, where time slows down and you can see the impact coming, but you're still processing whether it's actually happening. That's the silence that filled my living room when my mother-in-law looked me dead in the eye and said, "We need you to sell this house." Not asked. Need. Like I was a vending machine and she just inserted the correct coins. My father-in-law nodded from the couch, the same couch I'd saved for 6 months to buy, and added, "It's really the least you could do. Family takes care of family." I was holding a tray of tea and cookies. I'd spent the morning baking because they'd called and said they wanted to discuss something important. I thought maybe they were sick. I thought maybe they needed help with medical bills or home repairs. I didn't think they were about to ask me to liquidate the only asset I'd ever owned so they could retire to a golf course in Arizona. Let me back up. My name is Sarah. I'm 34 years old. I'm a high school teacher, which means I make enough money to survive but not enough to thrive. I bought my house 5 years ago. It's a small 3-bedroom bungalow in a neighborhood that was considered sketchy when I moved in but has since become trendy, which means my property value has tripled. I didn't buy it as an investment. I bought it because I was tired of landlords and thin walls and leases that could be terminated on a whim. I bought it because I wanted a place that was mine. My husband, David, and I had been married for 3 years when his parents made their demand. David was sitting next to me when they said it. He didn't flinch. He didn't defend me. He just looked at his hands like the answer was written in his palm lines. "How much are we talking?" he asked quietly. His mother, Patricia, smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile a shark gives right before it bites. The house should sell for around $450,000. We'd need about $300 to buy the condo we've been looking at and set up a comfortable nest egg. You two could rent for a while. You're young, you'll rebuild. I set the tray down carefully because my hands had started shaking. You want me to sell my house. Technically, it's both of yours, Patricia corrected, glancing at David. Community property and all that. I bought this house before we got married, I said slowly. It's in my name. I paid the down payment with money I saved working 2 jobs. Well, yes, Patricia said, waving her hand like she was swatting a fly. But you're married now. What's yours is his, and what's his is family. We raised David. We put him through college. We sacrificed everything for him. Now it's time for him to give back, and since you're his wife, that includes you. I looked at David. He was still staring at his hands. "David," I said, "say something." He cleared his throat. "Mom, Dad, this is a lot to ask." "We're not asking," his father, Robert, said. His voice was harder now, the friendly mask slipping. "We're telling you what needs to happen. We've looked at our finances. Social Security isn't enough. Our 401k took a hit in the last market dip. We need this." "You need my house," I repeated. "We need our son to step up," Patricia said. "And we need you to stop being selfish." The word hung in the air like a slap. Selfish. I was selfish for wanting to keep the house I bought with my own money, the house I'd painted and repaired and turned into a home. Before I could respond, Patricia stood up. "We'll give you a week to think about it. Talk to a realtor. Get the ball rolling. We'd like to close by spring." They left. They actually just stood up, grabbed their coats, and walked out of my house like they'd just asked me to pass the salt. David finally looked at me after the door closed. "They're under a lot of stress," he said. "Are you serious right now?" I asked. "They just demanded I sell my house." "Our house," he said quietly. "It became ours when we got married." "No," I said, my voice rising. "It didn't. We signed a prenup. You insisted on it, remember, to protect your precious family heirlooms. This house is mine." "Legally, maybe," he said. "But morally, Sarah, they're my parents. They need help. Then get a second job. Take out a loan. Do literally anything except ask me to give up my home." He stood up. "I'm going for a drive. We'll talk when you've calmed down." He left. I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by the cookies no one had eaten and the tea that had gone cold. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to David snore next to me like nothing had happened. That's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to dig. Because here's the thing about people who demand everything from you. They always have something to hide. And I was about to become an archaeologist. Before we go any further, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. What I'm about to tell you gets messy, legally complicated, and deeply satisfying. You're going to want to be here for the updates. Trust me. The thing about living with someone is that you learn their patterns. You learn when they check their phone, when they're distracted, when they're vulnerable. David had a routine. Every morning he'd shower, make coffee, scroll through his phone for exactly 20 minutes, then leave for his job at his father's accounting firm. Yes, his father's firm. The same father who was demanding I fund his retirement while simultaneously employing his son. The irony wasn't lost on me. That first morning after the demand, I waited until David left. Then I did something I'd never done before. I went into his office. David had converted our smallest bedroom into a home office. He claimed he needed it for work overflow, though I'd noticed he spent most of his time in there playing video games or talking to his parents on speakerphone. The door was usually locked, which I'd always respected because everyone deserves privacy. But privacy is a privilege that evaporates when someone tries to steal your house. The lock was cheap, the kind you could open with a bobby pin if you had patience. I had patience. I had nothing but patience now. The door clicked open. The office was neat, obsessively so. David had always been particular about his space. His desk was organized with military precision. File folders labeled and color-coded. I started with the obvious. His file cabinet. The top drawer was mundane. Tax returns, insurance documents, car registration. But the second drawer had a folder labeled Family Trust. I pulled it out. Inside were documents dating back 3 years. I started reading. My hands got cold. There was a trust fund, a substantial trust fund. Robert and Patricia Hayes had established it 25 years ago when David was born. The documents showed regular contributions, compound interest, growth portfolios. The current value, according to the most recent statement from 8 months ago, was $1.2 million. $1.2 million. They had over $1 million sitting in investments, and they were asking me to sell my house. I kept reading. There were distribution notes. David had been receiving disbursements since he turned 30. $25,000 a year, paid quarterly. I thought about our finances. David always said he made $60,000 at his dad's firm. We split bills proportionally based on income. I paid more because I supposedly made more as a teacher with summer tutoring gigs. But if David was getting an extra $25,000 a year, he'd been lying about his income. He'd been letting me pay more while he sat on secret money. My vision blurred. I took photos of every page with my phone, then I kept digging. The third drawer had something worse, a folder labeled Property Assessments. Inside were printed Zillow estimates for my house. Not recent ones. These went back 2 years, printed monthly. Someone had been tracking my property value since before David and I got married. There was a handwritten note paperclip to the most recent printout. Patricia's handwriting, I recognized it from birthday cards. Peak market window March-April. Push for spring closing. David agrees timeline reasonable. David agrees. I sat back in his chair. This wasn't a sudden desperate request. This was a planned extraction. They'd been monitoring my asset, waiting for the value to peak, and coordinating with my husband to pressure me into selling. I thought about our wedding. Patricia had insisted on being involved in everything. She'd pushed hard for us not to have a prenup. David had been the one who insisted we needed one, saying it was to protect both of us. Now I understood. The prenup kept my house separate, which meant I couldn't claim any of his trust fund in a divorce. But it also meant they needed my cooperation to access my equity. They couldn't just take it legally. They had to manipulate me into giving it. I kept photographing documents. There was more, email printouts between David and his parents. subject lines like timeline for Sarah's cooperation and backup options if she resists. I opened one email dated 3 weeks ago. David had written, "She's emotionally attached to the house. We'll need to frame it as a family obligation. Mom, you should emphasize sacrifice and guilt." She responds to that. If she still refuses, I'll suggest marriage counseling and introduce the idea that her unwillingness to help my parents shows she doesn't value our marriage. I read it 3 times. He'd strategized how to emotionally manipulate me. He'd outlined my psychological weaknesses like I was a target in a military operation. There was a response from Patricia. "Good. Make sure she feels isolated. Don't let her talk to her friends about this. Frame it as private family business. The more alone she feels, the more likely she'll comply to keep the peace." I stood up. My legs felt shaky. I walked to the window. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up. People were walking dogs, getting into cars, living normal lives. My life had just revealed itself to be a long con. I went back to the file cabinet. There had to be more. The bottom drawer was locked with a different lock, a stronger one. I didn't have time to pick it then. David would be home for lunch. He always came home for lunch. I closed everything carefully, made sure it looked untouched, and left the office. I went to the kitchen and made myself breakfast. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. I was past shock. I was in the cold calculation phase. While I ate toast I didn't taste, I uploaded all the photos to a secure cloud account. Then I deleted them from my phone. I texted my friend Jennifer, a real estate attorney. "Need to talk. Urgent. Can you meet tonight?" She responded immediately. 7 p.m., my office. "You okay?" "Not even a little bit," I typed back. "But I will be." David came home at noon like clockwork. He kissed my cheek like nothing had happened, like he hadn't spent years setting me up. "How's your day?" he asked, making a sandwich. "Quiet," I said. "I've been thinking about what your parents said." He perked up. "Yeah, and I need some time to process," I said carefully. "It's a big decision." "Of course," he said too quickly. "Take the time you need, but remember they're counting on us." Their family. Family, the word tasted like poison now. "I remember," I said. After he left, I went back to his office. That bottom drawer needed to be opened. I had a feeling whatever was inside would be the final piece, and I was right. The bottom drawer took me 40 minutes to open. I tried bobby pins, then a letter opener, and finally a small screwdriver from the toolkit I kept in the garage for furniture assembly. When the lock finally gave way with a metallic click that sounded like victory, I felt my pulse in my throat. Inside was a single accordion folder, the kind lawyers use for case files. It was thick, bulging with papers. I pulled it out and opened it on David's desk. The first document made my stomach drop. It was a quitclaim deed, blank but notarized and ready to be filled in. My name was typed at the top as the grantor. The grantee line was empty, waiting. Paper clipped to it was a note in Robert's handwriting. Plan B. If she won't sell voluntarily, David can claim financial abuse and file for legal separation. In community property negotiation, push for house liquidation to split assets. She'll be forced to sell or buy out his half, which she can't afford. Either way, we get the money. They had a backup plan. If guilt and manipulation didn't work, they were prepared to blow up my marriage and force a sale through legal warfare. I felt something crack inside my chest, not my heart breaking, something harder, something that had been holding me back. The rest of the folder was a treasure trove of deception. There were bank statements for accounts I didn't know existed. David had been siphoning money from our joint account in small increments. $50 here, $75 there. Amounts small enough not to trigger alerts, but large enough that over 3 years, he'd moved almost $18,000 into a private account. There were credit card statements in his name alone, showing charges at restaurants I'd never been to, hotels in cities he'd claimed were business trips. Receipts from a jewelry store for a bracelet I'd never received. Either he had a separate life I didn't know about, or he'd been funding his parents' lifestyle while telling me we needed to budget. There was more. A property deed for a vacation condo in Patricia and Robert's name, purchased 18 months ago for $270,000. The same amount they were now claiming they needed from my house. They already had their retirement condo. They'd already bought it. This wasn't about need. This was about greed. They wanted my money to upgrade, to furnish their second property, to fund a lifestyle they felt entitled to. And David had helped them plan it. I photographed everything. My phone storage was filling up, but I didn't care. I'd buy a new phone. I'd buy 10 new phones. This was evidence. This was ammunition. When I finally closed the drawer and locked it again, it was 3 in the afternoon. I had 4 hours before my meeting with Jennifer. I spent those 4 hours doing something I should have done 3 years ago. I checked everything. I logged into our joint bank account and downloaded 7 years of statements. I requested my credit report to make sure David hadn't opened anything in my name. Clean, thank God. I called my mortgage company and added a verbal password to my account so no one could access information without it. I changed all my passwords to accounts David might know. Email, banking, utilities, everything. I packed a bag, not obviously. Just a duffel in the back of my closet with essentials. Copies of my important documents, some clothes, toiletries, my grandmother's jewelry. I didn't know if I'd need to leave suddenly, but I was preparing for every scenario. At 6:30, I left a note for David. Dinner with Jennifer. Back by 9, I drove to Jennifer's office. She was waiting with coffee and concern on her face. What happened? She asked as soon as I sat down. I handed her my phone. Start scrolling. She did. I watched her face change as she moved through the photos. Shock, then anger, then a cold professional focus I'd never seen before. Sarah, she said after 20 minutes of silence, do you understand what you have here? Evidence my husband is a lying sociopath. Evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud, financial elder abuse in reverse, and possible grounds for a criminal investigation, she said. These emails about manipulating you could be considered coercion. The forged quitclaim deed materials are serious. And if they filed false claims about needing money while hiding assets, that's fraud. What do I do? I asked. Jennifer smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was a lawyer's smile. The kind that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. We build a case, we document everything, and then we don't just expose them. We destroy their ability to ever do this to anyone else. She pulled out a legal pad. First, we're getting you a restraining order against financial coercion. Second, we're filing a complaint with the state bar about Robert's firm if he's using it to hide assets. Third, we're reporting the trust fund discrepancies to the IRS because I guarantee they're not reporting David's distributions correctly. And fourth, she looked up at me, we're going nuclear. Nuclear how? I asked. We're calling a family meeting, Jennifer said. We're inviting Patricia, Robert, and David, and you're going to present every single document, every email, every receipt, in front of all of them, on the record, recorded. They'll deny everything, I said. They'll deny it right up until you tell them you've already filed copies with the district attorney's office and the IRS, Jennifer said. Then they'll panic, and panicked people make mistakes. I thought about Patricia's smile when she demanded my house. I thought about David's hand on mine last night, pretending to comfort me while planning my destruction. I thought about the life I'd built in my small bungalow, the life they wanted to strip away. When? I asked. This weekend, Jennifer said. Strike while they think you're still considering their offer. They think you're weak. Let's show them exactly how wrong they are. I drove home. David was on the couch watching television. How was Jennifer? He asked, not looking away from the screen. Good, I said. She's helping me with something. Oh yeah, what? A project, I said. You'll see soon. I went to bed early. David stayed up late, probably texting his parents about how I seemed compliant. Let him report back. Let them think they'd won. Sunday was coming. And on Sunday, I wasn't just exposing their secret. I was dismantling their entire world, brick by fraudulent brick. They wanted my house. Instead, they were going to lose everything. And I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly who they really were.